A long time ago, when you got to your table before the food started, there were legislative agendas at your table, both federal and state legislative agendas that the Chamber has put together. And coming up in March in Tallahassee, we will be working on these priorities. Key on this particular list for the state is transportation funding. Accelerating the funding, and we will be talking about this in both Tallahassee and Washington, D.C., but accelerating the funding specifically in South County around the 275, or the 75 and University Parkway interchange, trying to get everything ready to meet world rowing requirements for the 2017 World Rowing Championships. Next, economic and international development funding. Reducing the sales tax on commercial rentals and leases. And finally, restoring PICO funds for our educational institutions. These items head the Chamber's platform for Tallahassee this year. And again, also at your seats is the list of federal priorities, and the biggest one on that list for us, is the one getting most of our attention, is the flood insurance affordability study prior to any implementation of the Bigger Waters Act. And again, the commandos will be making that trip sometime this fall. Neil will tell us when we will be there at some point, but we've been making it in that September time frame the past couple of years. In that vein, I would like to recognize and introduce a former U.S. Congressman, former chairman of the board of the Manatee Chamber of Commerce, and just recently named Manatee County's 2014 Distinguished Citizen by the Manatee River Fair Association, the Honorable Dr. Dan Miller.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you and Neil for inviting me to be here this morning, make a few brief comments, asked to talk about the federal level. But it's interesting. I won this award, and I'm a politician and a businessman. I used to be chairman of this chamber back in 1989, and I always get together. I chuckle when I see Wayne and Carol's over here. Hey, when I see Carol Whitmore, we all knew each other in our other lives, and none of us would have thought we would become politicians because you're the public least likely to be politicians. And we all kind of chuckled. We made it into politics. I got out of it. You stayed in it. But good luck to y'all. But just a brief comment about what's happening in Washington, because what's happening in the state's really going to happen. What do retired congressmen do is I teach a course in dysfunctional Congress at the USF. A lot of topic to talk about when you talk about the dysfunctional Congress. And last year was considered the least productive Congress in history. I don't know if it's in history, but it was not very productive. And so this year is going to beat last year for being less productive. Last year they started off with gun control. Remember that the Democrats that tried to push it through the Senate went nowhere. Republicans in the House tried to defund Obamacare. It went nowhere. There's a recognition by Senator Reid and John Boehner that since nothing significant is going to happen, the focus has to be on the 2014 election. And the best way to make Congress more popular is stay home. And so they're not going to be in session that much. There's no use trying to do anything significant unless it has wide bipartisan support. So it's not a very productive thing. Trying to get anything out of Washington this year is not going to be easy until after the next election, and it could be until after the 2016 election. So, watch for the dysfunctional Congress to continue. But it's exciting that the state gets something done. So I'm anxious to hear your report. Thank you.
And thank you again for everything you've done for our county and our country. Okay, legislators, all two of you. We're hoping. Huh? Okay, I understood that there was something going on this morning. So, legislators, haven't been able to talk to just one side of the table in a while, but I really appreciate both of y'all being here today. You've heard this speech before. Job creation has to be a substantive centerpiece of everything that goes on up there this year. We've said it for the past 3 years. So we asked that every time you cast your vote, You ask yourself and your colleagues, does it strengthen free enterprise? Does it create jobs? Or does it undermine our free enterprise system? Now, I'd like to introduce our two members of our delegation that are here today, Representative Greg Steube and Representative Jim Boyd. Appreciate y'all being here. Originally, your instructions were to keep your thoughts concise to 8 minutes each. We probably have a little bit more flexibility if you want to add a little bit. I'd ask that everyone hold their thoughts until after both representatives have had a chance to speak, and then we will have our normal question and answer session following that. All right, first up, Mr. Boyd. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg and Chamber and guests and members and METV. This is always something we look forward to. On behalf of my colleagues, I'm not making excuses, but things happen and schedules change sometimes in our world pretty quickly. So I know they're sorry they couldn't be here today. Representative Roussan just texted me and said something had changed in St. Pete, Pinellas County that he had to deal with. So he apologizes as well for not being here. And if I could just take a second before I talk, just a little personal privilege. Congressman Miller, he's very modest. A lot of y'all will remember, many of you won't, the younger members especially. He was a businessman, very successful businessman, an educator, left this community to go to Washington to make a difference. He said he was going to be up there 10 years, I believe, and when the 10 years are up, I'm coming home. He went up there, he made a difference, he worked hard for his community, and he came home. So he's anything but a politician. He's a true statesman. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations. We've got a lot to talk about. I'm not so sure y'all would share Greg's thought that we can take longer than 8 minutes. So we'll try to keep it concise so we don't bore you to death, but we'll be happy to answer questions and anything that's on your mind we can talk about afterwards. Just a little bit about me this year, what I've got going on and what we're doing in our office. I was recently made chairman of State Affairs, moved from my governmental affairs committee or GovOps it's called, to State Affairs. So now with State Affairs, I've got the responsibility for Ag and Natural Resources, which I'm very excited about, governmental operations, which is a huge part of our state government and lots of the working parts of the state government, and as well elections and ethics and campaign finance committee. So there'll be a lot going on in all those areas, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's a new assignment for me. I'm pretty excited to have it, and we'll see what happens. But Ag is such a huge part of our community, as you all well know. I'm really excited to have some impact on a little bit maybe higher level there. I'm on Ag and Natural Resources on the subcommittee, but now with the position on State Affairs, I think that'll give us a chance to hopefully have a little more impact there. The other committees that I serve on are Gaming, the Select Committee on Gaming, and that, as you know, we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's going to have some activity this year. So those will be primarily where I'll be focusing my time, those three areas. One thing I wanted to report, because we don't often get to talk about the good things that we do up there, and last 2 years ago, if you remember me talking about the automobile insurance reform initiative that we undertook, the study just came in last week, and thanks to the support of good friends like Representative Steube and Roussan and the rest, we were able to pass House Bill 119, and the study just came back that so far it's lowered personal injury protection automobile rates for everybody in Florida average of a little over 13%. There's still a ways to go. Some companies hit the threshold that we have in the bill. The others will have to get to that, but it is working, and those things are hopefully saving a lot of dollars to a lot of Floridians in their automobile premium on the personal injury side. That happens to be a little harder hit in some areas like Hillsborough, Orange, and Miami, or Dade counties. That's where the most of the higher premiums are, but it'll have some positive impact here as well. This year, a few of the things that we'll be working on with Commissioner Putnam and Senator Brandes from the Senate. I'm carrying the House side of a charities bill, we call it, and essentially what that is, it just protects good nonprofit charities. And y'all have heard over the past year or so some of the people in the business that are not really doing it for the right reasons and doing it for the charities they represent. This puts teeth in the law. This puts accountability, transparency, and keeps the felons out of the business, and there were felons in the business, and also allows the good charities to do what they do. And it also gives Floridians a chance to know that their money that they're donating to these charities are going to the right places. So there'll be a website that you and I can get on and look and see when we just consider donating to a certain charity, where the monies are going, how it's being spent, and the like. So there's a lot more to it than that, but I'm pretty excited about that because I think that's something that's going to be very positive for Florida and very positive for the people in our state that are so generous with their dollars, to be able to know that what they're doing with them is the right thing, or the people that are doing the right thing with them at those charities. We had one example, and Representative Stubbe, I know it's talked about it plenty of times, but I think the charity was getting the charity people were getting like 98% of the monies coming in, and 2% went to the charity, and it was a veterans group that allegedly was the recipient of all these dollars. So that's the kind of people that we're dealing with there. Also, I'm working on a bill for the lodging industry, which is good for all of us. And simply said, our state government figured out a way, Department of Revenue figured out a way to tax internet reservations. So in other words, if let's say you're a Hampton Inn downtown, and you have your reservation centers in Chicago, or where you call in the 800 number, or you get on the internet and make your reservation for Hampton Inn, and it goes through Chicago. I don't know that it does, but as an example, Department of Revenue figured out a way to tax that transaction through the communication services tax as a taxable event, and then present Hampton Inn, for instance. In one case in Orlando, there was a hotel that got like $142,000 bill at the end of the year. That's nowhere near what was intended. That's nowhere near what was expected. Department of Revenue figured out a way maybe to make a little revenue, and it's even validated by the fact that when they were questioned, the accountants and the lawyers for the hotel chain went to visit the folks in Tallahassee. They said, "Oh, well, would you settle for $2,400?" So $142,000 to settlement of $2,400. Obviously, that's not the way it should work, and we're going to deal with that statutorily, so there's no question about that. So hopefully that will be see a successful conclusion at the end of the year. One other thing that we're working on in our office, Ed Brodsky, see how old I am? Ed Brodsky and some of our friends in the domestic violence group came to me and talked about a bill that allows testimony or written police reports of domestic violence victims to be used in court a little bit later on. It's pretty complicated and technical. Representative Stubbe's far more the legal scholar than I am, but essentially, if you're a victim of domestic violence and you call the police, and let's say it's a woman and the man has abused her, when the police get there, the woman might give the report and say, "Well, my husband, beat me up or did whatever." They write it down in the report, and all this information is taken. And then later on, for whatever reasons, the woman may recant her story and say, "Well, that's not exactly how it happened. She's scared, she's threatened, she's intimidated, whatever the case may be." So that is not admissible, or that's pulled out of being able to be used in court. This bill, under certain circumstances, would allow that information to be used in court as that the state may proceed to pursue that case. So hopefully that'll give a little more teeth to this terrible thing that's going on in our communities in terms of domestic violence, and let those people that are doing it know that we're taking it seriously, and we're going to do everything we can to get them out of that situation and in jail if that's where they belong. A couple of other things that are big this year. I think that we'll talk about several things, but education is important. Senator Galvano, as you know, is chairman of Education Appropriations, so he'll have a large impact in that arena. Some of our friends here locally have needs that have been neglected for a long time. State College of Florida has some definite needs that we're going to try to address. As we talked about at the delegation meeting a couple of months ago, we added up the numbers. It's $300 or $400 million, not for State College, but in Manatee County, of needs that are out there. So obviously there's only so much money, but Representative Stubbe and I have been there long enough now that we've got a little bit more clout and a little better seat at the table. Greg's on the Appropriations, the Full Appropriations Committee, which is a big plus for Manatee County. And with our leadership responsibilities that we have, hopefully we'll have a little more say-so in how some of those dollars are spent. So this year, hopefully, we'll be able to deliver a little bit in terms of the needs that are out there. We certainly support businesses growing and jobs growing. The past 3 years we've been there, close to 500,000 new jobs have been created, over 2,000 regulations eliminated. The governor's announced that we're going to have a $500 million tax cut. The legislature right now supports it. We don't know exactly where it's coming from or how it's going to play out, but we support that as well, and that'll be something that we're looking forward to. All the same time, we've been paying down debt and putting money away in the rainy day fund, so that is there when we might need it and when things come up that we didn't anticipate. Representative Stubbe is actually carrying the bill on the sales tax on the leases, so I'll let him speak to that. Water is a big issue, and certainly not just in ag, but for development, for those of us that drink water, obviously, or use it every day in our just personal lives. That's going to be a big issue this year. You've been reading a lot about the springs and some of the initiatives that are being proposed and taking place. The Senate had a close to $400 million proposal. The governor had a $50 million and then a $35 million proposal in another area recently. The House is looking at it seriously. Our Speaker designate, Steve Crisafulli, that's kind of his background. He's ag, he's building, he's cattle, that's his family businesses. So he's very, very in tune with that. So we'll be working very hard on that this year. And that's something that not just for now, but for the future, the availability, sustainability of good quality water is critical to our growth as a state. So we will definitely be all about that. Healthcare. I was talking to our friend Mary Ruiz when I walked in, and our county, unfortunately, or our state, excuse me, the other night at the forum at State College of Florida, we were told we were 49th in the country in terms of funding for mental health issues. Mary told me this morning in 3 days we've moved to 50th, so we're at the bottom of the bottom of the list. That's not acceptable. Soon to be the third largest state in the country, we have to take better care of those that need our help than that. So I know that's a tough area. Everything that comes before us, or most everything that comes before us, are good and important needs, but we'll certainly be looking at that and trying to do what's best there. And Mary's been good about giving us some areas that are critical that are on her list, so we'll work hard on those. Other than that, let me get back to the gaming thing quickly. We've had just a couple of meetings on the House side. The Senate's had several meetings, and then they've also had some public forums around the state where they've gathered information. Right now, I can't stand here and tell you I know what's going to happen, even being on the committee. What I suspect we will do, I'd be very surprised, almost convinced we won't have full-on gaming at the end of the session. You probably remember Senator Galvano was instrumental in orchestrating the Seminole Pact 5 years ago. That's up for renewal in 2015. So we have to do something there. We either have to let it expire, we have to renew it, we have to tweak it, change it, whatever. So that's on the table. That'll be something that's kind of driving a little bit of the conversation. There's also conversation about, do we need a gaming commission to try to manage what we do have? There should be maybe some parity in some of the gaming operations. And I use the example, there's a racetrack in Miami, great horse racetrack. I'm not into that, but if you are, you've probably been there. It's a very good one, and they have slot machines. In Tampa, there's another very good horse racing track that's not allowed to have slot machines. So why is that? Why is there no parity? Why is the one allowed to do something the other isn't? Miami, there's been a big push, and you've read about it, for destination gaming, and Genting, the big gaming firm, as you probably remember, several years ago bought the Miami Herald, the old Miami Herald property, and they want to rehab that into a world-class gaming destination. So then Miami says, well, we want to do it, and then Broward County says, well, if Dade County can do it, why can't you just let us go a little bit? And then Palm Beach says, well, wait, don't forget about us. So where do you stop? Where do you draw the lines? What do you do? So that's kind of where we are right now with that. We've heard a couple of studies on the impacts, both financial and social impacts of gaming in Florida, and those things are being kind of digested and evaluated, and then with our Senate partners, hopefully we'll come up with something that makes sense for Florida, and that all of you will agree is good. One thing that just kind of rings in my mind and is the Florida Chamber of Commerce, Disney, all of the Florida family, kind of friendly attractions. They don't support, kind of an expansion of gaming. So we've always been known as a state of, kind of a family-friendly state. We've got plenty of people here that are gambling anyway, and the casino, the Seminole casinos or the like. I understand that Hard Rock in Tampa, I was told, is the highest grossing casino in the country, even over anything in Las Vegas. So that was a bit of a surprise to me, providing that's true, and I trust it is based on where I got the information. We're kind of into the gambling or gaming business anyway, so let's see how we control it and how we monitor it so we still provide a great destination for Florida tourists and visitors. As we all know, they're going to come here anyway because of what we have and what we do here. 92 million last year. We hope to eclipse 100 million visitors this year. That's good for all of us. That's good for our businesses. That's good for our lifestyle and our economy. So we'll continue to support that, I know, as much as possible. I think I hit on some of the things that were on the agenda. I'd be happy to sit down and be quiet, let my colleague speak for a bit, and then we're here to answer any questions. But let me tell you again, as I've said before, it's a great privilege and honor to serve our community in this capacity. We're getting ready to crank up. We start next week with 3 weeks of committee meetings, followed by the first Tuesday of March session for 2 months. So we'll be a little bit distracted the next 2 or 3 months, but we're always available. Our office is available. Our staff is there. And even though Greg and I be running around like crazy, we're still available for you, and we're still available for what's important to you. So don't hesitate to call us. Love to see you if you have a chance to get to Tallahassee. It's always great to have our friends from Tallahassee, from here, visit us in Tallahassee, because then we really know it's important. So many of you can't. You have things to do and jobs and businesses to run. I understand that. So a phone call is great. But if you find yourself headed to Tallahassee, let us know so we can make sure we roll out the welcome mat and host you and take care of anything you may need. So with that, I'll be quiet. I went over 8 minutes. I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right.
Thank you.
Representative Stubbe, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. This is kind of low here. Can you guys hear me okay? Guess I'm going to have to lean into the mic. Well, it's always an honor and privilege to be with you here with the Manatee Chamber. I want to kind of hit on the committees that I serve on. See, the great advantage that this community has, both between your senators and your House members, is we're in very diverse committee structures. Representative Boyd serves on committees that I'm not on, and I serve on committees that he's not on. So when we talk appropriations, when we talk healthcare, when we talk business and professional regulation, I vice chair business and professional regulation, I vice chair health innovation, and I sit on the appropriations committee. So between the two of us, just about any issue, and with Senator Galvano chairing education approps, just about any issue that you would need in Manatee County, there is a member that probably has subject matter expertise in that particular area because we sit on that committee. So we're really at an advantage here in this community to have that type of impact and that spread across the board, if you will, on the issues that are important to our state. So I want to kind of talk about what my committees are doing this year, and then I want to hit a couple of what my bills, and then specifically related to business and job creation, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. As I said, I vice chair business and professional regs. Last year we did is there like a reverb in the mic, or are you guys okay? I can just hear it up here, I guess. Last year we did the distiller bill. So the craft distillers that brew or make their own distilleries here in the state of Florida, a great example is Siesta Key Rum. Siesta Key Rum down in Sarasota makes their own rum using Florida products, and they sell that product here in the state of Florida. But because of the 3-tiered system in alcohol distribution prior to last year, they weren't allowed to actually sell their product at their place of business. So before last year, you could go down to Siesta Key Rum, you could tour their facility, see how they make it, but you couldn't actually buy their rum at their place of business. To me, that doesn't make any sense. So last year I co-sponsored a bill, and we ended up compromising on the amount of bottles, but now you can go down to Siesta Key Rum, tour their facility, and actually purchase their product because you're going there to view and experience that product. This year we've changed our concentration from the craft distillers to the craft brewers. I'm sure you've seen newspaper articles both in Sarasota and Manatee County about Motorworks Brewing and some of these breweries that are popping up in Manatee and Sarasota County. Right now, under the current law, they are not permitted to sell their brewed beer other than through a tasting room at their facility. The 3-tiered system is the wholesalers, the distributors, and the retailers. So any exception to that is a violation of current law. So we're going to be looking at that this year. This has been a big issue that's kind of been boiling over the last couple of years. And the chairman called me last week and told me that I would be carrying that legislation. So I will be the member in the House carrying the brewery legislation. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it is going to allow those breweries that produce a product locally in your community to be able to sell that product locally in their community. They won't be able to sell other people's alcohol or other people's. They won't be able to act as a distributor, but they'll at least be able to sell their alcohol and their locally brewed beer at their place of establishments. So for all you that enjoy good beer, things are going to change this year in the state of Florida as it relates to craft breweries. So that's one of the things that I'm personally working on. I also vice chair Health Innovation. That committee deals with health policy as it relates to the state of Florida. This year, the two big issues that are going to affect that committee is one, the trauma centers, and two, the surgical centers. You probably have seen TV ads about the trauma centers in the state of Florida. I've seen them both here and in Tallahassee. What's going on is there was a rule that was promulgated by the State Department of Health. Last week, 2 weeks ago now, when we were in Tallahassee, the Surgeon General came to our committee and talked to us about how that rule was being promulgated and where we were at as it related to trauma centers in the state of Florida. The promulgation of that rule, there's now a lawsuit that Shands, Tampa General, and another hospital has filed suit against our own hospital here, Blake, and some other Ocala Regional, who also has a trauma center, to shut down their trauma centers. Blake has spent a tremendous amount of money developing that trauma center for this region. That trauma center is one of the few in this region. There's a couple up in the Tampa Bay area, but if you get in a bad car accident south of here on I-75, the closest place for you to go as a trauma center is Blake, instead of flying all the way to Tampa General. And in a situation where 5 minutes, 10 minutes can mean the difference between you living and dying based on your ability to get to a trauma center with surgeons that can effectively put you back together and save your life is very important, I think, to the state of Florida. So this year, the trauma bill will come through the committee that I vice chair, and we will address squarely what the lawsuit has occurred. So keep your eye on that. You will probably hear a lot as we develop that legislation. It's not out for the public yet, but I can assure you that Blake will still be able to operate, if I have anything to do with it, as a trauma center, and these other hospitals that have open trauma centers will be able to continue to open and run their trauma centers. Department of Health is re-promulgating the rule that is the precipice of the lawsuit, and that re-promulgated rule should be out by April. So we'll have an idea of what the agency is going to do, but we as the legislature are taking it on as our issue and moving forward with that. The other issue in health innovation that we're going to be looking at this year is surgical centers. The chairman called me last week and asked me to carry this bill because I was going to run an independent bill specifically on surgical centers. So we're going to be looking at what individual doctors and individual practitioners can do with surgical centers. There are other states in our country that allow you to go, let's say I have a replaced knee. So if you want to go and get a knee replacement, it's an outpatient, can be an outpatient surgery, but you may need to stay a night or 2 nights. Right now in the state of Florida, you can't, if you're going to have to stay overnight, then you're going to have to go to a hospital to get that surgery. In other states like Arizona, if you're just having a routine surgical procedure like a knee replacement or a hip replacement, you're young enough and healthy enough to be able to not be in a hospital, there's other states that allow you to have that procedure done in a surgical center. So you can go to that orthopedic surgical center, have that procedure. If you need to stay one night overnight at that surgical center, they have the facilities to do that, and then you're released the next day instead of having to go to a hospital for that treatment. That is an issue that we are going to squarely look at this year and has bubbled up over the last several years. It's going to lower costs to patients. It's going to lower your insurance costs, and there may be some hospital folks in here, but I'd much rather have a simple surgery like that at a surgical center that has the capability to do that. So those are issues that we're going to be addressing in the Health Innovation Subcommittee this year. Let me tell you real quickly about some bills that I have. Greg mentioned the commercial leases. We are the only state in the United States that taxes rents on commercial leases. The only state. There's one other municipality in the entire country that does it. I bet you can guess who that is. New York City. So we're the only state that does this. So I filed the bill this year to repeal that tax. So that it's a 6% sales tax on those commercial leases. So if you have a small business and you pay, say, $1,000 a month, you're paying 6% in state taxes on that commercial lease. What my bill does is it slowly repeals that tax over a period of 6 years. I repeal it a percentage each year because it's a big number. To the state, it's an income of about $1.9 billion. So to take all of that and repeal it all at once. Obviously, that's not going to happen because we're only looking at about an $850 million surplus this year, and the governor wants $500 million in tax cuts, most of which it looks about $250 to $350 million of that is going to be driver's license fee reductions that they had to increase in 2009. So I think, you know, you have a situation where we as a state and a legislature want Florida to be the best place for you to come and bring your business, for the best place for you to continue to have your business. And what better job creation than to be able to cut taxes on your commercial leases? Publix, Bell's, and your bigger commercial operators have told me that Bell's told me it's $14.7 million that they will save just in the commercial tax, and they'll be able to hire new employees with that money. Well, they'll be able to open new locations. Publix has assured me that they can open 1 or 2 brand new stores the day that the tax is repealed, because it's like a $30 to $50 million per year cost that they have. So they'll be able to open new stores, create new jobs, and be able to employ more people in our state and provide a great service in our community. So the things that the chamber supports, I think that's right on key with job creation, lowering taxes, and creating jobs in the great state of Florida. So that's a bill that I filed this year. You know, with the numbers, I'm hoping that we can get at least a 1% cut this year. Senator Huckel has the companion bill of my bill in the Senate, and all she does is cut 1% straight across the board. She doesn't do the repeal over 6 years. And it's better from a fiscal standpoint to do it that way, because you don't have to look at that big $1.9 billion number. So that may be the compromise, is we cut a percentage or maybe a 0.5%. But I have made the commitment to file this bill every year until that tax is gone. And we've got 5 more years left to accomplish that. So maybe I can get it done by the time we're out of the House. One of the other bills that, from a business perspective, how are we on time? Good?
We're fine.
From a business perspective, last year I filed a public-private partnership bill, and you have seen a tremendous uptick in the amount of government projects that have been able to be built based on that bill. Miami-Dade College is building a project right now. Seminole State College is building a $300 million project right now, utilizing a P3 model. So you've got a private investor or a company that's able to infuse private dollars into the building of public infrastructure needs. That passed last year was one of the governor's few bills that he did a bill signing ceremony for. This year, I'm doing another bill on that specifically for the 16 universities in the state of Florida. The universities didn't feel like there was language in that bill that they could take advantage of. With the lowering of PICO dollars that we've seen over the past several years as it relates to our public universities in the state of Florida, they don't have the money to do big capital improvement and infrastructure projects on their campuses. What better way to do that than to use private money and not taxpayer money to build an infrastructure project? They're paid out over a 30-year or 20-year period of time over an agreement that you have with the school. So you get a public project built that people get an opportunity to use in a much quicker time than you would be able to do than just using typical bonding or typical state dollars or PICO dollars for. So I'm excited. All of the universities wholeheartedly support it. Obviously, the construction industry supports this bill, and it's already filed, and we're moving that bill forward, and I'm very optimistic that we'll get that through the finish line this year. The last business-related bill that I have that I want to talk on is a bill I filed last year, and I'm filing again this year. You've probably heard me talk about E911. We've got a real situation in our state where the funding for emergency operations has been declining over the last 5 to 10 years. Let me give you a little bit of background and then tell you what the bill does. Right now, historically, you've got a 50 cents tax on both your landlines and your cell phones, but that's only if you post pay. So all of us in the room that have Verizon or AT&T, and you pay monthly, but you pay post pay, you're paying for the minutes that you actually used. You're paying, you may have seen it on your bill, you're paying 50 cents a month for E911 services that goes directly to whatever county you live in for their operations center, so that when you dial 911, there's actually somebody there to be able to answer the phone. That funding has dramatically declined over the last several years because people are moving from post-pay to prepaid. So if you go into Walmart and buy a prepaid phone for 100 minutes, you're not paying the tax. If you go to Metro PCS and you buy a phone for $100 and you buy 500 minutes, that's prepaid, you're not paying that tax. And because landlines are doing this, and postpay is doing this, and prepaid cellular phones are doing this, the amount of revenue that has been coming to our operating centers has been dramatically declining to the point where we can't offer the type of services in the next generation E911 that we should have in the state of Florida. In Boston, when the bombing occurred, the only way that that 911 center got the information they needed to service that area was through texting 911. In the state of Florida, we don't have that capability because the funding's not there, because all of the people that are in the pool aren't paying. So this bill will bring next generation 911 communications to the state of Florida. So when you text 911, you'll actually have somebody that can answer that phone. If you're in a position where you're trapped and you can't use the phone and you need to text, this bill will give us in the state the capability to do that. If you see a fire occurring or an accident occurring and you have a video capability on your cell phone and you take video of that accident, that video feed, we have the technological capability to feed that to 911. That information is fed to the fire department so they can see exactly what they're coming to when they're responding to a fire. Great things that we can have for the state of Florida, but the funding mechanism hasn't been put in place. So what this bill does is it actually reduces the tax from 50 cents to 46 cents, and then ensures that all of those prepaid cell phones are all in the pool, and everybody who's using some type of cell phone or landline service in the state of Florida is paying that tax, and to ensure that next generation services for E911 will be brought to the state of Florida. We filed it last year. It actually passed unanimously in the House. There wasn't a single no vote in any subcommittee, and on the floor of the House, due to politics, it died in the Senate. So this year I have assurances from the governor's office, and I have assurances from the Senate that some version of it will pass. So I'm hoping that we can move this and move Florida into the next year. There's no reason why a state that's the third largest state in the country should not have texting 911 capabilities in the state of Florida. So that's some of the things that I'm working on, and with that, I'd be happy to open it up to any of your questions. Thanks for having us.
If you've got a question, please come to that area. I'll be a parrot and introduce yourself, ask your question, and then I will repeat the question to make sure that the TV captures it. That's good, Mary. That's a great place to start.
Don't be shy, Mary.
And again, standard. Try to limit your questions, 2 questions, not just general comments, and 1 or 2 per organization, please. That was Mary Ruiz. There's no way I can repeat all of that. She's too smart. Okay. All right. Thank you, Greg.
The question was, there's on a scope of practice issue as it relates to nurse practitioners. Currently in, I think it's like 37 other states, nurse practitioners have the ability to do a lot more within their practice than they do in the state of Florida, and what we in the Health Innovation Subcommittee are going to be doing on that issue. That is going to be an issue this year. Last year it was the eyeball wars was what it was deemed between the ophthalmologist and the optometrist, and that their scope of ability to be able to issue oral medications and oral antibiotics was expanded last year. I think you'll see, I've already met with several people on both sides of that issue. I think you're going to see that issue move forward this year. I don't know what it's going to look like. I haven't seen what the bill looks like, but I do know that the committee will deal with it this year. The question was as it relates to communicating in the 911 and law enforcement's communication systems. Oh, the communication tax. I do think that there's going to be something on the communication services tax this year. I don't know if you've seen it. I haven't seen what they're looking to do. The issue though is you've got $850 million of a quote unquote surplus this year. $500 million of that the governor said he wants to do a tax cut on. I've seen between 350 and 450 million specifically on the driver's license reduction fees. So that right there takes almost half, if not half, of that from a fiscal standpoint. And then if you do anything on commercial sales leases, if that's a 1% or a 0.5%, you're at 250 million more. So I don't know if I tell you all that to tell you, I don't know if there'll be much more to do any cut in the communication services tax, but it'll be interesting as we go through the process. Let me keep talking about this bill that I have will actually, even though we're lowering the tax, it will actually increase funding to every county or city's 911 operating centers. So if the counties wanted to utilize that money to be able to do the type of things that you're talking about in Manatee County, you would have the opportunity to do that. What the 911 bill that I have does too, there's a board that actually sets that fee. Right now, it's capped at 50. It's capped at 50 cents, and it's been 50 cents for years. By lowering the tax, though, that board, when they look at it in the following year, if they need to increase that, then that would be within the purview of the 911 Services Board. So if they did do that, then there would be more revenue that would come to the local municipalities and counties as it relates to 911.
So Beechtree Nursebound, I want to just give you some reassurance that we understand how important it is to our communities and to our economy in Florida all over. The good news is, I think the state, our partners in the legislature get it as well. Our friend that came in with us, Ben Albritton, is the chairman of Ag Appropriations. That's kind of where it went through last year. We already have been working him. I know Greg has, I have, on that issue. As we said earlier, Greg's on the big approach committee, which is great for us. So that's a huge issue that's very important to us, and we will continue to fight for what we deserve. So don't worry, but stay in touch with us on it.
Okay, so Julia Ranabar with the Manatee County School District wanting to know the feedback on the discussions with the state after these $10 million in fines and penalties.
The feedback was really good, and I know Representative Stubbe advocated on your behalf, as I did. What we basically said to our colleagues that chair that committee, both from the House and the Senate, is we recognize there have been problems. We recognize we've done some things that were wrong. We know all that. We can't afford a $10 million hit right now as a penalty for that. Trust the team that's in place. Trust what they're telling you. Work with them, and I think good things will come. So I'm counting on you guys to perform because I committed that you would, but I know that you will. And with Superintendent Mills, I know that I know things are on the upswing. So they were very positive. I know they were tough on y'all. I wasn't there, but I read the feedback. So I know it wasn't an easy meeting to be part of, but unfortunately, sometimes those things have to get out. So the feedback was very good. The chairman of the committee, Representative Lake Ray from Jacksonville, is a colleague and a friend of ours, and he was very positive, that, as was Senator Abruzzo, the Senate chair. So they were very positive in that. We want to help them work through it. I don't want to be quoted as saying I don't think there'll be any fines or anything, because I don't know that, but the feedback was good in that if you do what you say you're going to do, I think we'll be good. So we'll stay in touch with them, but y'all made a great impact. I mean, made a great presentation and had them really reconsider what they were probably going to do.
And that's the extension of the CCTCP, so that we're asking about.
Before you answer that, Greg, just real quick, we have letters from our volunteers that we just wanted to hand to both of you.
Okay. As it relates to the funding, I haven't heard anything that would indicate that it's going to be reduced in any way, shape, or form. The one advantage that we have this year is it's really the first year that Representative Boyd and I have been in the legislature where we haven't actually had to cut the budget. So I think most of the funding that was in the budget last year will probably remain unscathed. We've got a little bit more money, and I think we're going to do some tax cuts with that, and then there'll probably be between 250 and 350 million that we'll be able to put additional funds into certain projects. So I would definitely encourage you to stay in touch with me when we start to go through the budget process. We'll be in so the subcommittees now are starting to put together their subcommittee budgets. By mid-March, we get our allocations from the Senate President and the Speaker as to each subcommittee. They finalize those subcommittee budgets. Those subcommittee budgets are then sent to the committee I sit on, the Full Appropriations Committee. So as those subcommittees are crafting their budgets that have your itemized allocation in it, just keep in touch with me on it so that I can keep an eye on it. The question was, as it relates to vacation rentals, in 2012, I believe, was the bill that preempted it to the state level. And there is, the update on that is there's a bill both in the House and the Senate. Senator Thrasher has it in the Senate. In the House, it's Representative Hudson that has it. Its first bill stop is the committee that I vice chair, Business and Professional Regulations, is its first stop. From talking to Representative Hudson 2 weeks ago when we were in Tallahassee, he appears to have the votes in committee. So I would imagine that bill will probably be heard in committee, if not next week, the week after, once our committee starts taking more member bills. Senator Thrasher is the rules chair in the Senate, former Speaker, former Senate President. So it obviously has leadership support in the Senate. The House tends to be a more conservative chamber when you start balancing property rights with local government's ability to regulate that. I think there'll be more of a discussion in it of that specific issue as it relates to property rights in the House. I do think at this point, from the discussions I've had with Rep. Hudson, he's got the votes to get it through his first subcommittee, and that's really your first hurdle. And then I also sit on Regulatory Affairs, which is the full committee that subcommittee sits under, and I'll see it again in Regulatory Affairs. So I think it has momentum. There are members, and I'm probably one of them, that have concerns about repealing that. And one of my concerns is if we repeal that, what are you as a local government going to do to these private property owners who have made an investment of dollars to basically build a home as to what they've done? A lot of the response to that I have heard is regulating noise, regulating parking, which the cities can do through ordinance now. So I think part of it is a conversation on what the cities can do now to curb the type of behavior that they want to not have in their cities under the current law, and if the full repeal is necessary. But from a political perspective, you've got momentum in the House. It's probably going to pass its first subcommittee. So I would keep engaged on the issue. Right now, it's a full repeal. There has been talk to trying to compromise some of the language and make it specific on what the cities can and cannot do. But I think that you've got momentum on that this year. The question was on medical marijuana. I'll try to be as fast as I can. That bill is going to come through Criminal Justice Subcommittee. There's already been a hearing. That's Representative Gates' committee. That committee's looked specifically at the Charlotte's Web version of medical marijuana, which is specifically used for children that have repetitive seizures or some type of epilepsy, and that type of medication, the Charlotte's Web medication, which it's not a smoking type marijuana, it's actually a pill form medication that has like 2% THC in it. That committee has looked at specifically that issue, not for adults, but for children that suffer from these diseases. And I think you will see some legislation in the House. I don't know if you'll see anything from the Senate, but on the House, specifically on medical marijuana as it relates to that type of medical marijuana, which is more a medicinal tablet form medicine that these children can take. I didn't see the committee hearing, but I have heard that it was very compelling testimony from the mothers of these children and from the children themselves, that they would have sometimes 1 or 2 seizures a day, and after taking this medication, they have 1 or 2 a month or every other month. So it does seem there seems to be some research as it relates to that specific issue. That's what the House is doing as it relates to the Criminal Justice Subcommittee. The question was, what do we do in the state of Florida as it relates to veterans coming home, veterans moving into the state, and as you know, the military downsizes, we'll obviously see more of an influx of veterans to the state of Florida. I think we need to do everything we can from a state's perspective, and every year I've carried a veteran bill. Being a veteran, I think it's very important that we recognize the service that our veterans do. This year, I've co-sponsored a bill that will take in-state tuition and apply it to all veterans in the state of Florida. So right now, if say I was stationed in, well, my home of record was always Florida. So let's say my home of record was in Virginia. I was stationed in 25th Infantry Division. I decided to move to Florida after my service. That service member, when he moves back right now, he has to pay out-of-state tuition for a year because he was technically not a resident of the state of Florida. That will be completely waived if this bill passes this year. And I think that's one of the very limited things that we can do for our veterans to show that they're welcome here in the state of Florida. So if a veteran gets off of active duty service or decides to move into the state of Florida, he doesn't have to pay out-of-state tuition. He's immediately allowed to pay in-state tuition to our state universities and colleges. I'm also working with the Department of Veterans Affairs and the DMV. 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, Senator Dietert had a bill that allowed you to put a V on your driver's license as a veteran. It was you could opt for it when you get renewed or got your driver's license. That information was getting disseminated to the VA, but it wasn't really going anywhere. So what I'm trying to do is work with both Department of Motor Vehicles and the Veterans Affairs to take that information to the VA. And if I have to do a bill on it, I will, but I think we can do it through a committee bill. Take that information to the VA, and then the VA disseminates that information to all of the local veterans organizations, whether it be Kirby Stewart Post, whether it be American Legion, VFWs, DAV, so that they have that information of who locally has now just come to the state or renewed their license as a veteran, to give them information specifically to veteran services that are available in that area. And I think that'll do great things for the guys and gals we have coming back, especially those that have been deployed recently on, hey, if you need a job, here's an opportunity where you can go get that. If you need mental health counseling, here are opportunities for you to be able to get that counseling that you need. There is going to be a huge veterans-related bill that will probably have this in it. Representative Renuard is the chair of Veterans Affairs this year, and that bill, they're working on that now. Speaker Weatherford has assured me that this bill will make Florida the best place in the country for veterans to reside, live, and move to. So I would keep your ear to the ground on that, and I think all the things that are important to you that are needed for veterans moving back will be done this year in the legislature.
So the first one is are we listening to polling on gaming, and the second one is any final comments on the three-tier system?
Yeah, I'll be real brief. Thanks, John. On the polling, I didn't mean to imply that the legislature was doing polling. We don't poll. They did a study that evaluated the economics of the gaming in various venues, Florida, around the country and the world, as relates to what we do. So but certainly we all read polls and we listen to them, and our constituents keep us in those. So, no, we may have asked we may have asked the question, but ourselves on like our pre-session survey, right? But so I get you, but certainly we listen to those. But the legislature, I just want to be clear, we didn't poll people. Individual members may have just asked survey questions, but certainly what the constituents say to us is very important, because if you don't like what we do when you say something, typically we don't go back. So, but thank you, good point.
Three-tier system in 1 minute, which you can't even begin to describe all the details of it. There's 37 other states that have a three-tiered system. The three-tiered system has been set in place since Prohibition. And over the years, there has been exceptions that have been made to it. Like a great example is wines in the state of Florida. We passed that bill in 2012, where you're like Bunker Hill Wine out in Duet. Now they can actually produce a product. You can go to Bunker Hill Wine and buy as much wine as you want. The issues and concerns that you just mentioned are part of the package that I will be working on this year. And I can assure you that now that I probably have the most subject matter expertise in the committee on this, because I've dealt with the issues both from the distillers, the brewers, the distributors, and the retailers, that I think there's going to be some significant reform in that area over the next couple of years. So I'd love to meet with you offline and we can talk about it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, representatives. Thank you, everyone. A special thank you again to Bright House for being our sponsor today, and again, METV for taping this program, and the Bradenton Country Club for another great breakfast. Please join us for lunch. Valentine's Day, February 14th, for the rare occasion to hear from Matt Kroenig, Associate Professor and International Relations Field Chair from D.C. The guy's amazing. He's got a beard now, so he looks like he's a little bit older, but when we first met him a couple of years ago, he looks like he's 18, and he can tell you about some of the scariest things going on over the Middle East. Anyway, very fascinating guy. I hope to see y'all then. Thank you again. Y'all have a great day.